Sa manifestacijom nije ono što je očekivano, nije ni sjena posljednjeg puta. Ali volja naroda i pojedinaca još uvijek se izražava.
United States of America, much blood was shed, much sacrifices were made to be here. And we know that those same sacrifices are being made today. That's why we're here. Well, let's start off with a prayer. We have Father Privilege from Pittsburgh, and let me turn it over to him. And if there's anybody we should appeal to when it comes to the quest for freedom, especially in a difficult place as the Balkans today, I almost hesitate to say Yugoslavia, because some people believe it doesn't exist. We have to be careful. So, let us now hear from Father.
Thank you. Let us pray. God our Father, we thank you and bless you for the freedom which we have in this country. And we ask you to please help by your Holy Spirit everybody who now lives in Yugoslavia, so that everybody who is there may have peace and freedom from war and communism. And all the people who have been hurt, tortured in Yugoslavia, have mercy on them all. Amen.
We are showing the world that the people of the Albanians, and then when he gets stuck, he backs off, goes after the Croatians. Now he wants a ceasefire with the Croatians. He's going after the Albanians again. When are we going to get smart? We gotta be together. If we were all together, he would have been gone 2 years ago. Not even the Serbian people like him, many of them. So we have got to be smart, and that's what this is all about. This is kind of an experiment. I have worked with these wonderful leaders, the Croatian Fraternal Union, Bernard Lukaček, Joe Brigic. We've got the Bosnian Muslim South Slav Alliance, Dr. Najib Sakapejovic. We've got the Committee on Hungarians from Vojvodina, Dr. Delbak. We've got Carl Bernuti from the Heritage Slovenian Foundation, and other groups represented, the Albanian American Civic League. Okay, look at this horrible situation. Can you imagine in this day and age that this kind of man's humanity to man exists today? I saw pictures even worse than this. I saw a Croatian soldier, a militiaman, whose body was chopped in half with an axe. I saw that picture. This is what's going on today there. So it's sad to see that this still exists, but the only way to counteract it is by appealing to the democratic governments around the world. The way we will win this battle is the way all battles have been won against communist tyranny. It's called world public opinion. And you're right now facing the body that is the strongest in the world when it comes to affecting public opinion. That's why this gathering was important today. Probably the richest in natural resources coming out begging for food. That's what communism has done to the Soviet Union. That's what it's done to Albania. That's what it's done to Yugoslavia. The system doesn't work. But you know what? You've got jerks and you've got despots and tyrants like Milosevic who want to keep their personal power. And they keep that personal power and they abuse all the other people. We've seen it in East Germany. We've seen it in the Soviet Union. We saw it in Romania. Are we fed up with this system? It doesn't work. We got to get rid of it, right? That's what we're here to do. Now don't forget the poor people in Kosova, because this very day they're having a referendum. They finally cannot take it any longer. A referendum is being held on their self-determination, and I heard last night one of my friends call me on the BBC. There's already some violence going on now in Kosova. You can be sure it's the Serbian communist regime again trying to brutalize and tantalize. All right, now let me say, when I gave that speech and wrote that article about apartheid in the middle of Europe that people didn't see, you know what apartheid is? Apartheid is when 8% of the population controls 92% of the population. That's what's happening. The Serbian communist surrogates of Milosevic In Kosova, only 8% of the population control 92% of the population. If you talk about freedom in Kosova and you're an Albanian, you can be arrested on the spot. 1/4 of the Albanian people, 500,000 people, have been put through the jail system, through their penal code system in one way or the other over the last 10 years. Unbelievable, but this has existed and no one writes about it. So make no bones about it. In Kosovo right now and in other parts of Yugoslavia, I see it happening in Croatia, there is cultural genocide. There is apartheid. It's the worst stain and it's in the middle of Europe. And unless we come together and speak about it, it's not going to go away. You can't imagine the energy that this man has, but you can't imagine his heart. He has stood up for people all over the world, and you can be sure he was one of the first to recognize the tyranny in Yugoslavia against the Albanians and the Croatians and the others. Thank you, Congressman Gilman, for being with us. Let's give a round of applause to Congressman Ben Gilman, Foreign Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Congressman DioGuardi, and I want to congratulate all of you for taking the time, even in this bad weather, to come down to Washington to be here to express our concern and our repulsion for what's been happening in Yugoslavia. And I want to commend Joe DioGuardi for bringing us all together once again. We must not let this issue be swept under the rug. We must keep it before the public, before our nation, before the world community of nations. The issue of human rights and of ethnic Albanians in the Kosovo region continues to be a compelling and a critical matter for all of us. The desperate political situation in Yugoslavia, where violence is part of everyday life there, forces us to focus attention on the Kosovo province, where the ethnic Albanian majority is desperately trying to assert its autonomy despite discrimination in universities, and continual harassment by the Serbian population. The presence of military force in the province provides an ominous symbol of the repression which continues to be a part of ethnic Albanians' daily lives. As you know, many delegations have recently visited the Kosovo province to take a look firsthand, to investigate the human rights situation in that region. Many groups returned appalled by the lack of cooperation exhibited by the Yugoslavian officials. Our European Parliament counterparts were not permitted to visit with dissident groups. They were afforded only second-level meetings with government officials. And we raised that issue just this last June when our American congressional delegation met in our yearly exchanges with the European parliamentarians. And I want you to know that they too are committed to making certain that there's not going to be human rights violations continuing in Yugoslavia. Ethnic Albanians are guaranteed their autonomy by the Yugoslavian Constitution of 1974. There's no reason for that repression to continue, and we say let's enforce those constitutional provisions guaranteeing human rights in Yugoslavia.
Congressman Chris Smith from New Jersey, who's taken a very active interest in this issue. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Joe. First of all, I want to thank Joe for his leadership and Senator Dole and others who have really led the way in the Congress on this very crucial issue. And your presence here today, in my view, underscores your commitment to democracy, your commitment to human rights, and the fact that there has been near silence, unfortunately, for many in the United States about this very important issue. That day has ended. This rally is the turning point in U.S. presence and commitment. A few weeks ago, Congressman Frank Wolf and I went on a peace mission to Yugoslavia. We went to Croatia, we went to Serbia. We met with President Tudjman, we met with President Milosevic. We had very tough talks, especially with President Milosevic, about the aggression that his government, in cahoots with the Federal Army, had been perpetrating on the people of Croatia. While we were there, we made two important side trips, if you will, to Vukovar and Osijek. And we saw, ladies and gentlemen, firsthand the kind of devastation that the Serbian army and the terrorists are bringing about upon that people. We saw frail, elderly people in Vukovar who are in bomb shelters, refusing to come out, to stay in Vukovar, to aid those who had stayed behind, to make a stand, to try to help those who are suffering through this agony. We believe that immediately the army must return to its barracks, that a ceasefire needs to be observed. And we believe that the aggression by Serbia, which now controls approximately 1/3 of Croatia, must not stand. Thank you.
Down with communist tyranny! Okay. Well, let me bring to the podium right now Shreko Karekovic. I know him as Joe. He represents the AMA for its citizens. That's what we're here for. Freedom, democracy, representation. Thank you, Joe.
Dear friends, I'm speaking on behalf of AMA Croatica. AMA Croatica is the association of alumni and friends of Croatian universities. And I had many, I must say, many Albanian colleagues on my school, and Slovenian, Bosnian, Hungarian, because Zagreb University was the most respected one, and many of them tried to study there, and that's why I had so many friends. And I also believe that I speak on behalf of all people whose conscience directs them to use all their energy to fight communism and aggression by the Serbian Republic. Many of us have had the unfortunate destiny of living in a communist system. Many of us can testify to the horrors of that system, because many have experienced those horrors firsthand. My brother has lost his leg fighting communism, and my father has lost his life in communist prison after communism prevailed in Croatia. Our moral duty is to tell the world about those horrors, and our historical responsibility is to remove this stain from human name, this stain called communism. One of the rare places where communism is still finding fertile grounds is Serbia. There, this atheistic philosophy coupled with nationalistic obsession has created a force of evil that is in open confrontation with humanity and our civilization. The war that this evil empire is waging against Croatia is not conducted in accordance with the Geneva Convention, which covered behavior during the war. The Serbian army is systematically destroying Croatia, killing or expelling indigenous Croatian population in an attempt to create ethnically pure Serbia. To achieve that goal, any means are justified in their minds. One of the ways they go to complete their goal is to use cluster bombs against civilian targets. And if you didn't know what cluster bombs are next to poison gases, one of the most inhumane weapons for mass killing. Each exploding bomb sends thousands of little sharp plastic nails flying in all directions. Those plastic nails do not show on the X-ray, which makes it impossible to locate them, to make it to military targets. All in civilian areas were deliberately destroyed. As the New York Times says, destruction of this scale has no precedence in Europe since Nazis bombed English cathedral cities in 1942. Serbian army doesn't go by the accepted norms of civilization. Yesterday it was Kosova, yesterday Vojvodina, Slovenia, today Croatia, tomorrow Bosnia and Herzegovina, then Macedonia. It is hard to believe that one nation, like Serb, can find so many enemies. There is no case in history where one nation is supposedly surrounded with so many enemies. Serbs have to be stopped.
But most important, Živeli Hrvati, yes. Wonderful. I am here because I understand why you are here. Yugoslavia of the past 45 years cannot be the Yugoslavia of the next 45 years. The United States government, as the superpower in the world, cannot shrink from its responsibility to intervene and stop the bloodshed. It must intervene. It must bring the United Nations in to stop the shooting and the killing, to lay the foundations for peace and stability for the future, to have an independent and free Slovenia as the Slovene people have voted, to have a free and independent Croatia as the Croatian people have voted, to have self-determination for peoples, because that is the Charter of the United Nations, that is the history of the United States, that is the history and what is written in the heart of all the peoples of what we call Yugoslavia, but what is no longer Yugoslavia. The land of the South Slavs now is at a turning point. People have chosen their destinies. They must be free to seek that destiny. And the United States has an obligation to intervene, to establish peace, and to chart a course for the future so that democracy can reign and not power, oppression, armed force. Thank you for being here.
You know what I just heard? 5 buses of Albanians went to the White House, so they're coming over here now with those young Albanian kids. I don't know whether they're here yet. From Paterson, New Jersey, are they? Are we going to extremely knowledgeable about the problems of Yugoslavia, the Balkan area, someone who traveled with me to Kosova, to Belgrade, governmental groups, foundations, civic leagues, cultural organizations. That's what America is all about. And one of the most effective that I've seen is the Congressional Human Rights Foundation. You've heard of the Congressional Human Rights Caucus, over 200 congressmen, headed by Congressman Lantos, a Democrat, and John Porter of Illinois, a Republican. Well, there's a foundation that does a lot of work to carry on the purposes of that caucus, but independently, and that is spearheaded by a man who understands what it means to do the right thing in Yugoslavia. David Phillips, as I said, came with me there. He's gone there many times, and I'd like him to say a few words. David.
I've got just a few things to say, and it starts with dictator in the world. The civil war that's occurring in Croatia at this moment was foretold by a pattern of genocide which has been committed against the Kosovars for years. Let's open our eyes. Let's realize that Yugoslavia is a thing of the past. And the republic status for Kosovo, and a guarantee by the United Nations, the U.S. Congress, and the international community that not one more drop of Croatian or Albanian blood will be shed in the pursuit of freedom and democracy.
4, demand that free elections be held in Kosova and Vojvodina to replace the militarily installed puppet regimes put there by Slobodan Milosevic. Number five, implement an economic agenda that isolates the aggressors, Serbia and the Federal Army, and establishes direct aid and trade with the democratic republics of Croatia, Slovenia, and the other republics. And you're going to see that implemented tomorrow in the Congress, a total embargo. Number 6, provide humanitarian assistance to help care for the hundreds of thousands of refugees who are fleeing Belgrade's menacing advance. And number 7, end the State Department's practice of lobbying against congressional efforts to support democracy, self-determination, and human and civil rights for all the captive nations in what was once called Yugoslavia. Dr. Hutchings, for over a year, the Democratic Republics pleaded with communist-led Serbia and the federal government to accept a new Yugoslavia that would be based on a true unity of sovereign states under a confederative system. But Belgrade refused to compromise and instead demanded greater authority over the other republics' affairs. Now Slobodan Milosevic and his Bolshevik Stalinist allies are enforcing with guns their bankrupt communist vision on everyone else. We ask kindly, Dr. Hutchings, that you inform President Bush that we can no longer accept a passive U.S. policy while our brothers and sisters are being butchered by Slobodan Milosevic. Okay?
Thank you, Joseph.
When Senator Don Regal came to St. Paul's Church there in Michigan and addressed an Albanian group, and I was so impressed with this beautiful statement that he made for the oppressed peoples in Croatia and in Kosova. We had Croatians there as well. He's got a busy schedule. He's committed to this issue. Please give a great round of applause to an important senator, Senator Don Regal.
Yay!
Let me welcome all the freedom fighters that are here today. And let me note among you the presence of so many friends from Michigan who have come a long distance to participate in this important demonstration. And I want to say to my House colleague, my former House colleague, I want to acknowledge and thank him for his great leadership on this issue. He deserves a round of applause because he's been out front. I am here to join with you to express my resolve to do everything I can to stop the tragedy that's underway. You've come to Washington to demand that our government act, and act now to help end the tragic bloodshed. And I join you in that call. Together we call on our president to apply his new world order to what is called Yugoslavia, to recognize that that nation, artificially held together for the past 45 years, like the Soviet Union before it, is breaking apart. The future belongs to the democratic forces which have taken hold in Croatia and Slovenia and throughout Yugoslavia, and not to the guns and tanks and military aircraft of the Serbian strongman Milosevic, whose brutal aggression against Croatia threatens the stability now of all of Europe.
And you know, when we get freedom, we're going to need economic development. We're going to have to go back to him.
Yeah!
We got powerful people outside. Now, let me show you what a lecture George Bush got from this great senator. Dear Mr. President, ever since the death of Tito, the multinational cauldron of Yugoslavia has progressed from the slow simmer of 40 years of communist rule to the ethnic boil of today. Since June of this year, over 400 people, including civilians, have died in Croatia, Slovenia, and before that in Kosova as a result of fighting throughout Yugoslavia. Leaders of the Yugoslav army maintain that their forces have been only used as a buffer between competing militias. But according to the State Department and the European community observers in Yugoslavia, the federal army has not served as an impartial guarantor of a ceasefire, but has actively supported forces under the leadership of the Serbian strongman Slobodan Milosevic. I am deeply concerned with the current situation in Yugoslavia and America's passive response to the violence there, Mr. President. Through months of conflict, American diplomacy has avoided active participation in efforts to achieve a ceasefire and to separate these warring parties. While we must support the European community efforts to reach a settlement of the crisis, it is time for the United States to take a leading active role in this problem. Mr. President, America must stand with the peoples of Croatia and Slovenia and Kosova as they seek a peaceful solution to the civil war. I strongly urge you to expand America's political and economic contacts with the Croatian and Slovenian governments and with the Republic of Kosova, and to ensure that the legitimate interests of the Albanians, also all over Yugoslavia, but in Kosova especially, are taken into account in any settlement there. Moreover, we we must put pressure on the federal Yugoslav government and the Serbian leadership to end the fighting. And if a ceasefire can be firmly established, the United States must seriously consider support for European proposals for peacekeeping forces to act as a buffer against further violence. In the Persian Gulf, Mr. President, America used all of its diplomatic savvy to assemble an unprecedented international coalition of nations to oppose Iraqi aggression. Now the time has come for the United States to take a leading role in efforts to resolve this crisis in Yugoslavia. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for that great introduction. I just wanted to be here to welcome you and be here under the dome of the Capitol and to say that freedom is necessary, not just in the United States, not just here in the Capitol, but in Yugoslavia too, in the countries that compose it. Okay. Croatia, Bosnia, Albania, Macedonia. I was there myself just a few weeks ago. Particularly keen to see so many from Albania here. I think of the damage that is being done in Kosovo and the abuses that are in Kosovo, and I would hope that the time will come when the Serbs will get out of Kosovo and leave it to the Albanians. And let self-determination guide the actions in that part of the world. I spent a little time with Slobodan Milosevic. I must say, did not find him a very agreeable man, and would hope very much indeed that Serbia would have better leaders and more peaceful leaders than it has today. So God bless all of you. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature, the nature of God, entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Unquote. It is my understanding that in the year 1776, the very first European government to recognize the new United States was the tiny Croatian Democratic Republic of Russia, now known as Dubrovnik.
Yeah! Give us back!
I look forward as a United States Congressman to the day soon when I will be able to vote to support the concept of the United States recognition of Croatia, Slovenia, and all those nations who want freedom.
Bravo, Joe!
And now, in the year 1991, it is time for the policy of the United States to be on the right side of history, supporting the will of the people and supporting peaceful self-determination of all the people of Yugoslavia. It is time for the United States to face the reality that communist federal Yugoslavia no longer exists.
Bravo!
It is time for the United States to stand with those who seek freedom and democracy, not with those who practice repression, aggression, destruction, and terror.
Yeah!
I know that President Franjo Tudjman and his Republic of Croatia had begun to build a Croatian society that is based on political and economic freedom, respect for human rights, protection of individual liberties, and an independent judiciary. However, while the people of Croatia prepared for democracy and a free market society, others planned and prepared for war. It is a tragedy while the Croatians, Albanians, Slovenians, and others have moved toward freedom, a free market society, democracy, and self-determination, certain elements, mainly the communist-controlled Federal Army, have waged a war of repression, tyranny, and destruction to counter these legitimate democratic aspirations of the various people of Yugoslavia. We in the United States should step forward to speak loud and clear that the New World Order does not reward those who seek to change borders by force and aggression. In the face of this continuous threat from communist aggression, the United States should consider severing ties, breaking the ties with the Yugoslav government now being run by communist generals. The communist Milosevic misinformation and propaganda machine would have you believe that this crisis is an ethnic conflict and one of the Serbians defending their homeland. It is a fact that in the counties of eastern Croatia, known as Slovenia, where most of the ferocious fighting has occurred, there's not one county with a plurality or majority of Serbians.
Thank you very much for that.
Is a man who has suffered a great deal under the very tyranny that you are trying to convince the United States of America that enough is enough. He has spent almost 9 years in prisons, and now, finally being in freedom, he is fighting for his country and for the principles that he has stood for many years as a student and as a professional and a writer from Zagreb, Dr. Michael Veselica. He will speak in Croatian, and I will spontaneously try to translate as best as I can what he's trying to, the message that he is passing to us today.
Draga braćo Hrvati, Albanci, Muslimani, Slovenci i pripadnici svih naroda koji žive u porobljenoj Jugoslaviji od strane srbo-komunističke klike. Kao što je poznato, Slobodan Milošević i snage koje stoji iza njega metodama najvećeg zločina, genocida, ubijanja, klanja, trovanja albanske djece i izgona, prije svega sada u Hrvatskoj, Hrvata sa svojih predovskih ognjišta, vodi jedan od najprljavijih ratova u povijesti Europe, gotovo u suvremenim ljudskim uvjetima, gazi sve što je civilizacija, demokracija postigla, ugrožava ne samo interese i prava naroda na samoopredjeljenje, ljudska prava na ovim prostorima, nego dovodi u pitanje mir i stabilnost na Balkanu, u bivšoj Jugoslaviji i nažalost centar tiranije, terora, komunizma, bolševizma i vladavine tenkova prešao iz Moskve u Beograd. Beograd je postao centar terora i smrti za sve narode koje štenju pod velikosrpskom bolševičkom čizmom. Zato se svi narodi na ovom prostoru u suradnji sa demokratskim snagama Europe, Amerike i čitavog svijeta moraju zbiti u jednu demokratsku ligu protiv srpskog komunističkog imperializma u borbi za svoju slobodu, demokraciju i samostalnost. Ono što danas Srbija radi, što Milošević hoće, koji trenutno protiv hrvatskog naroda upotrebljava 1100 tenkova, 1500 različitih vrsta oklopnih vozila i transportera, oko 300 borbenih ratnih aviona, nekoliko desetaka brodova, 110.000 vojnika i oko 50.000 četničkih rasista i terorista koji kolju djecu, civile, kopaju oči, masakriraju, koji ne daju ranjenicima da se liječe, a mrtva da se pokopaju. To je danas karakteristika velikosrpskog bolševičkog zločina nad milionima pojedinaca i naroda na ovom prostoru, a gdje je sad Slobodan Milošević koncentrirao svoju snagu i svoj zločin nad hrvatskim narodom i hrvatskom demokratskom vlasti, jer hoće da razori taj demokratski poredak, da otme dio hrvatskog prostora pod firmom da su Srbi ugroženi u Hrvatskoj. To je najveća laž. Srbi nisu ugroženi, samo se trebaju skinuti njihove privilegije, jer su oni do sada vladali sa policijom, sa vojskom. Oni su postali bolesni od terora, od zločina, od jedne ambicije da vladaju sa ovim prostorom, da drže u lancima i ropstvu Albance, Hrvate, Muslimane, Mađare, Crnogorce, Makedonce i Slovence. Zato Slobodan Milošević i njegova generalska klika, ratni zločinci Adžić, Kadijević, Života Avramović i drugi rade i ugnjetavaju da bi progutali tuđe prostore, jer znaju da proces borbe za slobodu, demokraciju, svi naroda na ovom prostoru, koji su žrtva velikosrpske, bolševičke i zločinačke politike, ne može se ničim zaustaviti, jer se raspada i Sovjetska imperija. Bila je nada generala zločinaca da će uspjeti put u Sovjetskom savezu. Imali su suradnju sa generalom Jazovom, direktorom KGB-a Janjevem i drugima. Srpski generali Milošević se veselili gdje je predsjednik srpske vlade Dragutin Zelenović izjavio da je komunizam Feniks koji se obnavlja u Srbiji i Rusiji i da će on voditi Europu. Međutim, to su prazne nade, to su želje terorista i zločinaca, jer i narodi Sovjetskog saveza i narodi bivše Jugoslavije ne žele ni komunizam, ni Srpsku imperiju, oni žele biti slobodni, samostalni i kao takvi žele biti dio moderne demokratske Europe i čovječanstva. To je naš cilj, naš zadatak.
As you know, the Nazis and the Holocaust, he understands freedom. He almost died for freedom. He has worked for freedom all his life. He's one of the greatest congressmen we have. We're proud of him. He came with me to Albania. He came with me to Kosova. He came with me to Belgrade. He has never stopped. Give a rousing welcome to Congressman Tom Lantos. Lantos! Lantos! Lantos!
The last communist dictator in Europe will be gone before long. We saw Ceausescu go, and we saw Zhivkov go, and we saw the communist leaders in Poland and Hungary and East Germany and everywhere else go. And we are not going to be patient too long until we see Milosevic go. The people in Slovenia and Croatia, the Kosovo and Montenegro and Bosnia-Herzegovina and the Vojvodina are among the most talented people in Europe, and they are entitled to live in freedom, in democracy, and with independence. The time has come for the European community and for the United States to put sanctions on the communist government of Serbia. Economic sanctions will bring about what reason has failed to bring about. And when that day comes, and it's not far in the future, we shall be here celebrating the freedom of the Croatians and the people of Kosovo and Vojvodina and all the others, and they will be fully a part of a free and democratic Europe.
In your government, down in Foggy Bottom and over there in the White House, that they act too. That they act for the rights we all enjoy in this country, and that we demand for all people. That our government gets off the fence and gets on the right side, the side of freedom in Yugoslavia. That's what it's all about here today. So I would just say, in introducing Senator Don Nichols, who's a very good friend of mine and a very young man. He's going to be around here for a long, long time, so you want to get acquainted with him. But I would say to you Americans of Albanian, Croatian, Hungarian, Macedonian, Muslim, and Slovenian heritage, gather here united in your call for America to do what is right and to stand on the side of democracy, human rights, and self-determination in Yugoslavia. And I am here today because I want you to know that I am with you 100%. Thank you.
About this great Senator Nichols, because if you remember the Nichols-D'Amato amendment last year to the foreign aid bill, that's the man, Senator Don Nichols. So let's give him a rousing applause. Nichols! 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 Nichols!
Nichols! Let me just say that, one, I'm delighted that you're here. And I will tell you, it's a pleasure working with a senator like Bob Dole. I had the pleasure of traveling to Yugoslavia with Senator Dole. We had the pleasure, too, of going to Kosova.
Yeah, right.
And you might be aware of the fact that Mr. Milosevic didn't want us to go to Kosovo. He tried to stop us. And I will tell you what, he couldn't stop Bob Dole, and I was glad to be with him. I will tell you that speaking on behalf of the United States and speaking on behalf of the United States Senate, when we went into Kosovo, we were speaking for freedom. And we were speaking against the human rights abuses that were being perpetrated by Mr. Milosevic and his people, against the people in Kosovo, against the people and now in Croatia and Slovenia. So we're behind people that desire freedom. The United States stands wholeheartedly behind you and behind the efforts of people who are seeking freedom, and we hope that it can be achieved in a peaceful way. But we need to send a very strong message to Mr. Milosevic not to misuse the Serbian army against the people of Croatia today. He needs to stop. He needs to desist. And we will do everything. We will do everything within our power, within the power of the United States Senate, to send that signal out very loud, very strong. And again, I compliment Senator Dole for his leadership. You have a very good friend. People in Croatia have a very good friend in Senator Dole. We are happy to stand with you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Senator Nichols, Senator Dole, look up these pictures here. Senator Dole, look at the mutilation of the bodies here in, this is recent. We saw this in Kosova 2 years ago.
Hey, lady.
What's going on today?
Lady, move on side.
And we've seen even worse pictures than that, bodies hacked up. So we have to stop this tyranny. Thank you so much for being here.